Napalm JL. We're putting our Clayton Off Road 2.5-inch lift with Falcon shocks on today. As you can see, the Napalm, we're getting started already. So I've already taken the wheels off, jacked it up, and loosened the frame side track bar bolt. Now I'm going to loosen the axle side track bar bolt. I don't know how much fun it is, but...
Hey, neighbor.
Alright, now we're going to remove the heat shields from the upper control arms. And I hope I got the right size socket. Yep, 10 millimeter. What I'm working on. Here's your heat shield for your upper control arm. There's a control arm, there's a heat shield. Bolt here, then there's one on the top. You can see I'm working on right now. Then there's the driver's side. Now, next step, you just want to loosen all your control arm bolts. The bottom ones are going to be the bolt is going to be a 21 millimeter, and the nut is a 24 millimeter. Crud. It's not getting on there good. Yep, you just loosen them, you're not taking them all the way off. And then the tops are, what did we say, honey, an 18 millimeter?
Yes.
Yep, the tops are 18 millimeter. Okay, so on the passenger side, upper control arm, I had to use a breaker bar and a ratchet. It's really not that tight. It's like 80 foot-pounds, I think, is what the torque spec is. So you can't get the impact in there. So that's the issue. Okay, control arms are loose. The sway bar end links. Where'd the nut go? It flew around. Oh. Thank you, darling. in the old parts pile. because we won't reuse those. Alright, the next step is going to be to remove the shocks. And Jeep did a whole lot better job than on the JKs in making this stuff more accessible. But as you can see, my inner fender liner, I mean, you can pull it out, but I really need it to go up. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to trim this plastic piece right here, just with a Dremel. Now, I mean, it's got an edge right there anyway, so to give me a guideline, I can take a Dremel, just trim that out, and then the access to the shock bolt is a lot easier. So I think that's what I'm going to do. Okay, so I trimmed the inner fenders just a little bit. Now you can see, just give it a little push up on there and you have access to the bolts really easily. So 18 millimeter, we're going to take the shocks out. Okay, the shocks are out, as you can see. One more shock in there. Don't be like me and take the top bolt out first, and then when you take the bottom out, the shock just drops straight down on the ground. It's one of those things. I found it funny. But anyway, next step, we're going to remove the retainers that hold your brake lines and your ABS sensor line. You got to take those loose so when you drop the axle it doesn't break them. And they are going to be right here on the frame, and then here on the lower control arm. It's a 10 millimeter and a 15 millimeter. My videographer had to go, so it's just me. And we'll do that on both sides. So while you're on the passenger side, it's easy to get to. We're going to need to remove any axle disconnect wires, and I'm going to show you here in a second. It's easy to get to from here. And then the axle vent tube is going to have to come off, so you don't want anything holding up your axle droop. You're going to want to be able to drooping it to get the springs out. It's not going to be an issue, but the springs you're putting in are a little bit bigger, so you got to have the axle's got to drop low enough where you can get the springs in there, and you don't want anything binding that, hindering that process up. So here's the axle disconnect right here. So if you just take a little flathead, pop in that white piece right there, pop it out, press it down, and that'll pop right off, and then that's good to go. Okay, on the driver's side, got the brackets loose, and then the vent tube comes down. It's actually zip tied to your brake line and ABS right here. So there's your vent tube. Just get you a pair of channel locks, and you should be able to slide that clamp back and pull the vent tube off. Alright, vent tube's off. Also, on Rubicon models with the E-lock, you got your wires for that as well, and you're going to need to disconnect those, as well as pop this little plastic loom out right here. So this works just like the other one. Little white tab, pop it out, press it down, pops right off. And you can just grab those little plastic retainers that push into the frame right there, but I like using these tab removal tools because it helps keep them intact a little bit better, and that way when you push them back in, they still retain, they still hold them in there real good. So I've actually got to do that to the other side too. So It's kind of boogering up on me. I'm trying to keep from happening. It's difficult holding the camera with one hand, trying to work with the other one. That one broke. Oh well, give me more flex on the trail. So now we're all disconnected. Alright, the next step, once you got everything disconnected, lower the axle, remove the springs, which I have done, you can tell. No springs. So the next step is to remove the upper control arms one at a time and replace them with the new ones. So that's what we're going to do now. Upper control arms. Alright, so I've just spent about an hour putting the driver's side control arm in. You can see that it's on. Alright. What I had to do, because I wasn't getting enough droop, I think if I disconnected my front axle, I could have got enough droop just dropping it down. But because I adjusted the control arms to the manufacturer's suggested length, which is shorter than the stock length, because the Jeep itself is going to go up, so it's going to change your pinion angle. So in order to keep your caster right, your upper control arm is going to need to be shorter. And so I could get it in there, but it was just the holes were off center. So what I ended up having to do, I'm going to show you. I took my jack stand and I put it on the passenger side, right underneath the steering knuckle, and jacked it up. And you jack this side up, the other side tilts down. And so then I was able to get enough droop on that side to get the upper bolt in. So connect the axle side first and then connect the frame side. That's the way I did it. It may or may not be the right way, but it worked. So once I figured out, you know, all the issues with getting enough droop to get the holes lined up, it worked out. So, but that's what I did. So now I'm going to do the passenger side. I gotta turn my music off. Okay, both control arms are on. The passenger side was, it was difficult. It was hard to get the frame end lined up. So here's what it took. I ended up having to go under the differential and jacking it up almost to where my bump stop is hitting the spring perch. So that's what it took, jacking it up like that to get it lined up where I could get the bolts in. So the upper control arms are on. I'm going to take a break and probably have an adult beverage, because I probably have spent 2.5 hours on the upper control arms. So I'm tired. I need a break. Be back in a minute. Okay, so the Clayton kit didn't come with bump stop extensions or anything, and it's probably not a big deal, only with a 2.5-inch lift and 35-inch tires, but at some point I will be going to either 37s or 38s. So I thought it best to go ahead and just put the bump stops on now, and that's something I won't have to do later because I've got it all apart anyway. So I went with the rock crawler bump stops. They're basically just discs, right? And they're adjustable. You can put 1, 2, 3, 4 on there. I'm going to go right now. I could probably just do 2, but because I am going to go with bigger tires, I'm just going to go ahead and put 3 on there now and be done with it. So with the one thing you do have to do is you have to drill out the bottom striker pad, that spring perch, to a 1/2 inch. So I just used a step bit and drilled right down there. You can see I've already done it. So I'm going to shoot some paint on there and let that dry so we don't want rust. So to do that, and then we're going to do, we take the track bar off and put the new springs on and the shocks, and button everything up. The front will be done. Alright, so I got the springs and shocks on. Passenger side. This spring is not centered. That's because the track bar is disconnected. The instructions said to remove the track bar and install the new one. Looking back now, it's probably best, and I'm going to do this on the rear, I'm not going to remove the track bar, change the track bars out until I've got everything on and I put the wheels back on and it's sitting at ride height. And I'm going to show you, there's a real easy trick to get it centered up and be able to get your track bar in there. But here's the driver's side, and it looks much better, as you can see. More centered on the bump stop. But the passenger side will straighten up once I get the track bar hooked up. So now I'm just going to go back to buttoning everything back up, hooking the wires and everything up, and we'll put the wheels on it and set her down and do the track bar and turn it around and do the back.
Good morning. Day 2. Working those control arms took some time, and then at the very end, the front's basically done, but I ran into some issues mounting the sway bar end links. I went with the Rock Crawler quick disconnect front sway bar links, because even though this is a Rubicon, under severe articulation, the stock sway bar links have been breaking and bending, and you know, just that stock sway bar disconnect is really only intended for mild articulation, and it's not going to get it done climbing over some of the rocks and stuff that I intend to be going over. So I'd rather just disconnect altogether and have my sway bar on the drive home. So, but show the issue I've run into. So the Rock Crawler kit, now JKS is generally considered the best, and I had their quick disconnects on my JK and really loved them. But the problem with the JLs is that, if anybody's familiar with them, there's the previous sway bar mounting tab on the axle. You have to cut that off for the JKS, and it's not that cutting it off would have been an issue. It's not like I, was scared to do it or anything. I have plans for the future, and that tab may be necessary. So I didn't go that route. So I went with the Rock Crawler. And what the Rock Crawler does is they have this bracket, right? And it slides over the OE tabs like this, right? Bolt goes through here and sway bar connects here to here. The problem is this is off just a little bit. These holes won't line up quite right. So you don't want to drill this hole out. So what I found out was my problem, I ended up on the passenger side, I just took my Dremel and just sanded on this a little bit at a time, right on the top of this tab, until it fit down on there like you get the bolt through. So that's what I'm gonna have to be doing this morning. But there's that setup right there. So that's where I'm at now.
Due to time constraints, we move ahead in this scheduled program. We're done. Well, not exactly. I still got to do the sway bar links and the rear track bar. But it's done. The lift is on, and I'm quite certain I got way more than 2.5 inches out of this thing. And the sun is shining today, but it is supposed to thunderstorm later, so now this is a 2.5 inch Clayton Off-Road lift. There, I got the rock crawler sway bar disconnects in the front. And right now napalm is sitting on 35s. So that is the clearance I have with a 2.5 inch lift and 35 inch tires. So yeah, I'm definitely going to need to get the lower control arms, get that axle moved back where it's supposed to be. But I like it. That's badass. Napalm. The lift is done, completely finished. The main goal of my videos is to give folks the chance to see that a regular guy can do these modifications on your Jeep. I've been wrenching on cars and trucks and Jeeps since I was 14, 15 years old. But I'm not a professional mechanic. Sometimes, you know, I have to call people that know more than I do. But we all own Jeeps. We love them, and we want to fix them up. And it's expensive to do it right. Just parts alone. So if you can save a few bucks and do it yourself, that's what my videos are about. I hope you guys like the video. I've taken it for a test drive, and I really like the way it feels. I didn't get out on the interstate, but I got up to 55 miles an hour, and it rode great. I'll have a chance to get it out on the highway here in the next few days and really, you know, get at the highway speed, 70, 75, 80 miles an hour, and see what it does then. But I got to get it aligned. Just want to double check. My steering wheel's off, but you can fix that with the drag link. And honestly, I've been rolling around under the thing for a day and a half. I'm just done with it. So when I get in alignment, all that'll be done. Everything will be straight. So again, please leave comments, call me a dumbass, whatever you want to do. I'm good with it. I've never claimed to be an expert, so it is what it is, and I hope you guys like it. Clayton Off-Road, Falcon shocks, rock crawler, good stuff, real good stuff. So if you're going to build your Jeep, if you're going to lift your Jeep, I would definitely recommend looking into those products or those companies for your products. That's all for now. If you guys have anything to say, say it in the comments, and we'll see you guys next time. Jeep on.